What's up, troopers? I just wanted to add a little preamble to this one to share that this was an episode that we recorded before the points change and before the new upgrades and all of those other cool new fun things. So, just go easy on me when I start bad mouthing Yoda in the first part, and I'm sure there's other things too. Second part, what was a good time. We talked about some of the more heinous situations in the history of the game, along with the world champ and Mike, and we all sort of shared our feelings of when Legion has been in the moments of hottest messes, which was honestly mostly in the past, not a bad thing at all. Wanted to add a couple more things. Also, we are recording a interview with the developers of Atomic Mass on Monday, and then I also wanted to make sure that everybody knew that the heinous caption situation that happened with our last video is not something that's going to return. I am sorry about that. That was a consequence of the fact that we're using new software, and I was just like pushing too many buttons, but won't happen again. Appreciate everybody's patience, and we also have a couple more, or one pretty cool announcement that's going to be coming in the next coming weeks. So do all the clicking and subscribing and various things. I'm obviously a very professional content dude. But yeah, enjoy the episode. Thanks.
Hello and welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Evan. That's Mike. Got a third time special guest, Isaiah Wallace, the world champion. How you doing?
Doing good. Special guest. Third time. I like the intro. That's
not many people can say that they've been here this frequently in this short a time frame.
It's only you. I think it's only you and enemy of the podcast, Brian Bear, at this point.
So what you're saying is Brian and I need to have like a fisticuffs to come out on top for fourth, or for who gets to come on for the fourth time.
I'm pretty sure that between Brian and I, all the bridges have been burned. There are no longer even ashes of bridges. No one even remembers that bridges were there. That's how burned they are. And we'll probably have him on in a few weeks. But yeah, good to have you, Isaiah. It's been a chaotic couple of weeks for me. I had to abandon my car in Southern Oregon. And that was after the end of that was at the end of the second of two like pretty drawn out trips, one of which was the WTC that we both went to in England. So I had not done as much planning as I usually like to do. And so the planning for this episode was that you and I were at the same tournament on Saturday. A couple days ago as we record this, and I basically was just like, "Hey Isaiah, you want to come on the podcast on Tuesday?" And you were like, "Sure." So I appreciate you coming on, even though it was short notice, and making up for my bad organizational skills. So I'm sure Mike does too.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked before we figured out how the tournament went for me, because I don't think if you'd seen how the tournament ended, you might not have asked.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Mike, how are you doing, man?
Doing good. I'm doing good. I've been, being an enemy of everything that we
enemy of the
talk
game,
about.
Mike Berry.
And I've just been being studious, studying, and watching a bunch of Warhammer it's like Warhammer 40K and 40-minute videos, which are very good, by the way. I don't know if you guys.
I was bracing for whether you were going to say that you were watching a bunch of lore videos about the
No,
Space
no,
Wolves,
no,
that
no.
you can know exactly what, so you can tell between your Ulfars and your Ulafs, because you don't want to mix those
I'm
up.
a rule of cool, man. I just want as many wolves in the army as possible. That's really all I care about. But I've been reminded by watching these Warhammer 40K and 40-minute videos that Warhammer is such an atrociously bad game.
Wow.
Like they do an amazing production job, and they make it look like it's like you're on ESPN, and it's like they've got all these cool special effects and stuff. But God, is that game bad?
Wow. Yeah, Isaiah, you like me have never played 40K, right?
I've consumed 40K in the best possible way to consume it, which is playing the video games and looking at the pretty models and then never, ever, ever sitting
Okay.
down to play a game of
Yeah,
it.
we're on the same page there. Rogue Trader. Did you play Rogue Trader?
I played Rogue Trader. I played the demo at PAX last year, 2 years ago, but I never actually ended up sitting down and playing through it all the way. Played through Space Marine 1 and 2, and
Oh
those were
yeah.
just
Well, those
great.
are great.
What
Yeah,
was
they're
the? Oh man, I downloaded a 40K game like pretty recently, and I played like the opening few. It was like XCOM, but not really.
Probably
well,
Rogue
so
Trader.
Rogue Trader is sort of like half XCOM, half like original Baldur's Gate, like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2.
Yeah,
Like it's more RPG-ish than XCOM, but it is tactical in that, you have cover and it's turn-based, and you have like Overwatch stuff. Um, and so, I mean, it's basically just as I described it, and that's the way it was sold to me. And I didn't know anything about 40K, but I'll be damned if I didn't just like start playing that game and not stop it with all my free time until I had like gotten 100 hours in.
mm,
It's really good. The characters are solid, and it actually does a good job sort of weaning you into the universe.
sure, sure.
If you're not familiar with the vast silliness that is the 40K
Yeah.
fiction. So yeah, like there you go. There's my free game recommendation of the day. Is to consider checking out Road Trader, just like if you're generally a fan of either XCOM or Baldur's Gate, or certainly both. Then it's just like, it's like sort of a fusion between those two in 40K, and it is pretty fun.
I'm just gonna
There,
throw this hot take out here
yeah, sure. Hot take time.
since you brought it up.
Hashtag hot take.
Baldur's Gate is also an atrociously bad game.
Well, Baldur's Gate is Dungeons and Dragons mostly.
No,
Ooh.
no, 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 it's not. It Baldur's Gate
Mostly.
is a pre-con that you buy from the store Dungeons and Dragons Adventure, which is the worst kind by a lot.
I happen to like the Tales of the Yawning Portal personally, as far as the
Okay.
pre-cons go. Listen, so some of us are just more filthy casuals than old Mike Berry over here.
If you saw I've got like a D&D rule book for
Yeah,
the setting that I've created and all the custom classes and spells and all that stuff. It's I think it's like 350 pages. Um,
Jesus.
yeah.
Yeah, man. Hey, more power to the people that know that feel confident about doing that. I would not. The I'll say this one's also for free, and then we'll get to the actual podcast. The favorite thing that I've done as a DM, and I know that I didn't invent this, I had heard it from somebody else, but if there's ever a point where you would need to make a trap, for the adventurers, the for people who aren't aware of the joke, like my favorite thing is to put a giant bear trap in the middle of a hallway, and but like have it be right out there, and then when they inevitably try to disarm it, and it in fact sets off the real trap, which is that there's a bear in the ceiling that drops down when they disarm the bear trap on the floor. And then you're like, ha ha ha, you set off my bear trap, and then they have to deal with the bear. So that's a free one. This is not a D&D podcast, but anyway, Space Wolves. There is a Space Wolf in Rogue Trader. Uh, I'm glad you're enjoying building them. I'm sorry that you have remembered that 40K is a bad game.
It's like one of those things where like I've gone to the point of like trying to see if the Star Wars Legion like movement tools will work on the 40K basis. Or like if I need to rebase them all to like, play them as like you know, you know, clones or something.
Uh,
But
yeah, range troopers. Like Space
yeah,
Wolves
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
look like range troopers.
Sort of. I
They
mean,
have like the
honestly,
fur.
the movement tools kind of, work fine. They sort of slot in there. The vehicles don't work, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
And the vehicle shoot 360, right?
That's what it looks like from the videos.
Dumb. It's so dumb.
So
It's like
that,
like a truck or a tank is like backing its butt up into the battlefield and like shooting its main cannon, even though it's pointed the wrong way.
it
Like,
didn't used to be that way. It
okay.
seems like that it's that way now. Before, like the angle of the vehicles like really mattered. There was like front armor and side armor and
Mm.
rear armor and like your guns on the sides of the your like sponsons could only shoot left or right, and your
Yeah.
main cannon could like turn, but it doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. It's just you could do whatever.
They gotta simplify for the kids these days. All right, we'll stop the D&D 40K Rogue Trader talk. Very quick shout outs. We have one new patron, AG. Thank you for joining, and then two random shout outs for old patrons, Joe Comer and Rich Rubino. I don't know if Rich goes by Ricky, but that would be a pretty sick name, Ricky Rubino. So Isaiah, we're gonna regale Mike with the tales of the things that we did right and the things we did wrong. In the local that we went to last week, the local was at Blue Sky Comics and Games. I think I've shouted them out before, but just to say again, it is for my money the best game store in the state because of how much space they have and how much stock they have. Zulu's is very good, so don't get mad over there if you're listening about that. And then Meeples is, like my hometown one, but they don't have any space to play games, so that sucks. But yeah, Blue Sky, awesome, awesome, awesome. I go there pretty regularly these days. So yeah, we both crossed over. Like, did you cross over in the ferry as well, Isaiah?
I didn't. The
Oh
ferry
man, it's
timings
so
were just
nice.
inconvenient for us where it's like, oh, we would have taken the downtown Seattle one, and it's either we depart at 7:30 in the morning or we
Yeah, that's
depart
the
at
one I
10.
went on.
Oh, did you? You were
Yeah.
there. Oh, wow.
So yeah, like I just went to Starbucks and chilled out and just like did some reading.
I was asleep at 7:30 in the morning. I was not waking up that early
Yeah.
for
So some
for
of us
that.
some of us were programmed during the training phase of our career to not sleep past 6 in the morning ever. So
Oh
it's not
God. I'm gonna be honest. I can't. I don't know when the last time I woke up before 6:30 was. I
it's
couldn't
great.
tell
It's
you.
invigorating, really. And as I get older, it just gets easier and easier to wake up early too. So extra bonus points. So yeah, we made our way there separately, but there was this local, and we had chatted a little bit about the list that we were bringing. I brought the 6 act list that has been sort of making waves just because I wanted to try it out in a local environment, and we talked about that list so much here that I'm not going to get into the construction. We will link to the Longshanks for this tournament if people have not like checked it out yet. But Isaiah, tell us about the list that you brought over there.
Oh, I'd really rather just talk about how 40K is bad than talk about
Tell us
that,
the
but okay.
list.
Um, so I was experimenting with trying to see if I could find a way to make Yoda viable. Um, couldn't. I mean, the short of it is couldn't. But the core of the
No,
list was
we're
a
gonna need longer.
the core of the list was a Yoda Rex list, trying to use them to kind of fill each other's weak spots, and then extenuate it out with a Ahsoka super squad, 3 commandos, 2 ISPs with missile pods, and then uh, two just naked core because you have to have them. But
And
uh, so overall in the tournament, ended up going 1-1, and then had a third game that we'll get into. Um, but for the most part, kind of tried to structure it in a way that was leading turn one with Luminous, throwing the ISPs, the commando, or sorry, throwing the 2 naked core out there first, then the ISPs and the commandos, letting them try to get some range 4 early Alpha Strike picks, which admit moderate success with. I think there is something there for the ISP triple commando set. But then leading into the last 3 activations being Ahsoka, Yoda, and Rex. And then turn 2, trying a dive with There Is No Try, which is Yoda's 2-pip that offers Yoda and 1 trooper Relentless, a dodge, and outmaneuver. and using that to run Rex in and run Yoda in with a burst of speed. And turn 3 using a Call Me Captain turn. That was the general strategy I had going into it. It had some success. The first game I played, I was able to execute it fairly well. Um, and I am totally prepared and had the Longshanks page open because I definitely remember what his list was. But it was the one you played last.
Oh yeah, so
Uh,
it's a Sith swarm kind of. It's a
yeah,
triple Sith CIS.
yeah. And I was able to execute it pretty well against that. That functioned pretty neatly. The second game was against Big Willie, who is a phenomenally good player in my opinion. I he took
He won.
yeah, oh yeah, he beat me.
He won the
Very
tournament. I
very
mean,
close
also.
game. And I definitely made some piloting mistakes. And I think the biggest one looking back is I think I dove too fast. Sorry, the second biggest mistake I made was I dove too fast. The first biggest mistake I made, and this is where I tell everybody the most important list is the one you know, is I forgot a lot of important triggers like E-stems, where I let Rex die when he absolutely shouldn't have because I just forgot that I had E-stems and completely threw the game. um,
That is an extremely, especially if you're writing the list for the first time. It's very easy. But unlike, like there's sometimes when you forget, like, oh, I forgot I have offense. I forgot I have emergency comms on this guy, and I could have used it last turn. Like that's like, oh man. But if you forget E stems, you're like, oh, because I forgot this guy's dead,
yeah,
and so it
it
matters a
was
lot more.
pretty rough and definitely influenced the game. I think the game came down to a very close. Well, we went down to kill points. Um, had Rex lived, there was a speeder bike that Empire speeder bike that was on 2 health that very likely would not have survived because there were 2 attacks that went at it, so it would have had 6 more red dice coming in. Um, it just was a huge oversight on my part, and kind of one of those. It's a gimmick to say it, and I said it a lot after Worlds, but it really is true that the best list is one you know, and that it, getting practice in with your list is kind of more important than the quality of the list in a lot of cases. Not to say that you shouldn't try to build the best list you can and be willing to adjust it and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, really knowing your triggers, really knowing your situations that you need to be setting yourself up for are just I mean, it's really setting yourself up to fail if you're not, you're paying 8 point in this case, 8 points for an upgrade and then just not using it. That's
Yeah,
wasted points.
but I mean, I think that you do sort of paint a good picture of an important point, like from the get go, which is that you designed your list with your activation order in mind for turn one, and so like that's certainly a very important part of it, and it goes to something that Dave Grant said a couple times when he was on the cast that I really liked, which is just the idea that a list needs to have a plan associated with it, and so you had that plan, but plans are only as good as the paper they're printed on when you don't execute, and believe me when I say that um, I'm in a similar boat as far as like how things went with my list, but the way that you make those mistakes less just by getting reps. And both of us, I think we're going into this list having never played these, into this tournament having never played these lists before, and so that sort of stuff is going to happen. I think that the, but like after you go through that experience, the question becomes, do you think that if you were executing appropriately, that the list that you were running would be something sort of like worthy of trying again?
I am torn. I do think there is some value there. I think giving Rex Relentless is, or not, sorry, yeah, Relentless is a big deal. Especially because kind of my intent with that was move, shoot, move into melee to give him some bubble wrap, so he's not just falling apart before his Call Me Captain turn. And I think that obviously giving Scouting Party to Yoda helps Yoda's biggest issue, which is being 1 speed, right? Um, I think there is some value there. I don't know. It's I think there's value there, and I think there's a place that could be exploited. But the way I had Yoda kitted out at 200 some odd points, it's sure hard to get that value out of him, and it's sure hard to get the 110 or 115 out of Yoda or out of Rex with his kit without without dedicating even more to both of them. And I think there's something there. I haven't quite figured out how I want to put those pieces together yet. I kind of feel like I'm sitting there trying to smash the square peg into the round hole and it's just not working quite right. But I think maybe if you were to play around with some of the Alpha Strike stuff, maybe drop a commando or two and try to maybe pick up Bad Batch or figure something out in there, there could be some options. I mean, we've seen success with lower activation lists recently, as you were just talking about with the 6-ax list. And maybe leaning into that a little bit with this style list might be beneficial, but I just haven't had the reps to really suss it out yet and see if I think it's a good, plausible solution.
So
Mike, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I
You have the
actually
floor.
think if ARFs were good, I actually think that there would be a list that Yoda probably could be like pretty handy at, and that's like if all of a sudden you have a bunch of aim and surge tokens that you go unload into a unit that actually has a big dice pool on turn one.
Mhm.
Like the issue now is sort of like, okay, you've got this like sweet turn one luminous play, which is like great, but the units that are good, that are effective on range, it the range band on turn one that is like the scenario you're in are like commandos and ISPs, which like don't really need the aim help, right? Like they don't they're like almost all red dice. It's like maybe you're
The
re-rolling like
commandos often spend one aim and then that's all they need
right,
on turn one.
and even when you spend an aim to re-roll dice, it's like you're re-rolling one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're not getting full value. And I think part of that is like, you know, I actually feel like if ARFs came in or for that matter, marksmen,
Marksman. Yeah.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if they come in and they're at like a decent points value where, you're throwing like somewhere between 7 and 9 dice in a range 4 attack, and you can kind of justify it. I actually think Luminous could be really strong. Like that's gonna harken back to some other things we're gonna talk about today, I think. You
For
know,
sure. For
Yes.
sure.
I'm
as
looking
a
forward to that.
precursor. But you know that yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But I do think that like kind of to your point, I think the tools exist. I just don't think that they're quite good enough yet.
Yeah. And you're also part of my concern with I did try a range for more alpha strikey list at a Portland tournament a little bit back. And part of the issue that I'm having currently, and I think this is not a game issue. I think this is just kind of a community thing. Is this was directly after the area terrain change,
Mm.
which resulted in a lot of very dense tables, be a lot of very dense LOS tables, just because the tables, people already kind of had what they had, and you were playing with stuff that before would have been a pretty decent spattering of LOS blocking area, non-LOS blocking obstacle terrain. Suddenly you were doubling up on LOS blocking because you'd have giant smoke columns. That was like, oh well, this changes the viability of a alpha strike list. So
Right.
I've kind of leaned off of those just a little bit until we start to see tables adjust to the new rules. But I think we're starting to get there, and so I'm kind of starting to lean more back into trying to look towards that kind of list. Uh, but I'm not sold on its viability, kind of like you were saying, because ARFs are a rough choice. Eh,
Everything's
Marksman,
just like a little too expensive right now.
yeah,
If to for those units specifically.
yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some stuff in Republic that are maybe too
It'll,
cheap.
it'll be interesting when we know a marksman cost and whether there's anything funky about the way they do what we assume will be a marksman super squad. Because as you guys say, if you are rolling out there and you have 2 aims and 2 surges from Yoda, and then potentially you have another aim you can use, like just to make sure that everybody gets the long range on the shot
Mm.
Yeah.
from an ARC trooper nearby. Then you're cooking if you got a big shot. Um, and like maybe we would even be talking about putting Echo in there too. I don't know. I know. Well, like we did the same thing with ARF Troopers, is that we were like, what about the 150 point Echo ARF Trooper squad? And then we tried it, and we were like, oh, this is very expensive, and it's just not worth it. But I'm excited to find out what's going to really go down with the marksman. But yeah, like when I hear you saying all this, Isaiah, I feel this deep pain in my soul. It it's you sound to me like somebody who is at the bottom rung of a multi-level marketing scheme, and you're just talking about, if I can just get one rung higher, then maybe I can start making money from it.
Listen, he's good. I swear. I just got to get 3 people signed up under me to use Yoda and play against me, and then when I beat them, I get to move on to having Anakin. That's how it works.
Just like maybe it's because I listened to a podcast about MLMs, like when I was on the way down to California recently, that it just like came to my mind. You were talking about, you know, maybe I just like pour more points into making this already, 170 point investment or whatever he is to be more viable. And I'm just thinking, or we can just wait for him to be costed more appropriately and do other things. I realize that there are some folks listening to this who are upset at me saying that, and you have every right to be. Some would say I'm taking the coward's way out, but I just am not seeing it with Yoda, to be honest with you.
It's hard. Yeah.
Now, what if he could move those super squads around with his 2-pip? Or like what if he could guidance the Ahsoka squad into doing a move shoot, and then when you activate the Ahsoka squad, they double move charge. Wouldn't that be cool? Would be, but can't do that anymore.
I mean, with yeah. I mean, like
Right?
it would be I think a little bit absurd with with an Ahsoka Super Squad specifically.
And maybe for all we know, like the concern about the strength of super squads, especially with like Ahsoka in mind. But honestly, back in the day, it's maybe something that we unexplored when it was still possible, was the idea of doing a 5 super squad with Yoda, to like truck him around for a guidance move shoot and then a double move charge.
Yeah.
Like that could have been something to that. And for all we know, maybe that's part of why they took it away. But
as we continue to talk more and more about super squads, I don't want to be like a negative Nancy, but I feel like they could have achieved the same result by just like letting you take more core units.
Would have made the game longer.
Maybe like the game is already longer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like, it's interesting to me because I think there's a whole host of new issues that we're like repairing like one by one, we're like, and I don't know. It sort of seems like an unnecessary complexity for something that isn't even good.
Ouch. It's yeah, like the whole Zebra Squad thing is definitely interesting, and I think that after November, I think we should probably invite Nick Bodnar back on and do a rehash of like the very first episode that we did, because like we'll know a lot more about Super Squads, and they might have changed a fair bit since the first time that we assessed them. But Isaiah, why don't you also tell me about your game 3? That was an interesting one. I
No,
wasn't able to see all of it.
no.
So I'm gonna have to press you on this.
All right. So, I did lose my 3rd game. My opponent was summarily kicked from the store for bad sportsmanship and will not be allowed back now. So I played my wife 3rd game. It is at this point a running joke that any tournament we go to, we end up getting paired against each other. We got paired against
Even
each other there.
Adepticon.
We got paired against each other at Worlds. We got paired against each other at Evergreen Open last year. We get paired against each other constantly. So kind of at I kind of discount that game from inclusion because it's a very different experience playing her for me than it is anybody else. And she's very well aware of a lot of my tricks, and we're also just very casual, I guess, when it comes to playing each other because we do it so much that it's kind of just like oh, okay.
That's two excuses so far, Mike. I'm
Yeah,
just
that's
keeping
two
track.
excuses. The third excuse is that because we'd both already lost a game. I just decided to turn it into a drinking game, and that made it so much worse for me. It did not end well. Which, to your credit, you were saying about Blue Sky, they serve tankards of beer there, and it
Yeah, if you order a Sprite, they literally give you a pint of Sprite, and it's just
it's
like this is too much, man. So like when that's beer, that's a problem.
it's a lot. But
Yeah.
no, she executed very well. She was running not the 118 B1s or whatever the max B1s is. She was running the number of B1s that we own, which is like just shy. I think it's 6 super squads and like a 7th naked squad or something like that.
It
No?
was Invasion Force.
No, I'm just like shaking my head at how many minis that is. That's crazy.
Oh yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. She wanted to run the full size, but we just don't have enough B1s. And it's not a great
Casual.
it's not a great list, so she's not super interested in picking up a whole bunch more. But provided an interesting it kind of ran into a similar issue that a lot of Alpha Strike lists run into against that kind of list is very similar to Ewoks. I just don't have the dice.
Sure.
It doesn't matter how many hit, how many go through, how good the rolls are, how well I play. I just don't have the hits to burn through it. And it really she was very much so able to capitalize on that and just say, yeah, sure, eat a B1. Who cares? You just spent 4 activations to eat a 90-point unit, and now I'm on all the points. And she executed very, very well. I don't I genuinely don't know that it was I don't think I made a ton of mistakes in that game, but I genuinely just think it's a horde mode list that I can't deal with. And
I'm
while you
sorry.
probably won't
Whoa,
see
whoa,
that
whoa,
list
whoa, whoa. Let's back up. You can't blame it on the alcohol and then say I didn't make any mistakes.
Thank you, Michael. We need to keep this world champion. We need to keep him honest because nobody else will. Everybody out there, they're always like fawning over, oh wow, that's Isaiah. He's the world champion. He won worlds with an Obi-Wan list. Listen, Isaiah, for your benefit, we're gonna continue to not be impressed over here.
Good.
And we're gonna call
Good.
you we're gonna call you on your shit. So do you
Well,
want to start over, Isaiah?
I just said on my last game I forgot Eastims. It's not like I'm above admitting my mistakes, but against her I made no mistakes. I played a perfect game. There was absolutely zero errors made. It was
Right.
good. But it does highlight a real problem in my list building is I sometimes struggle with really hard skew lists like that just are
Mm.
gonna run you over. And kind of like what I was saying is Ewoks are the more common version of that because they're the better version of a horde list than B1s. But I wouldn't have a good
So
answer
that's
to
fair.
Ewoks either. The list that I was trying to run, if I ran into Ewoks, I think I would just lose on I don't have the dice. It's kind of in Old Legion, oh, somebody rolled up with a bunch of armor and I don't have impact. That's a stat check and I just failed it kind of thing.
Yep.
That there's not a way out of really.
Last time I looked, I think that the overall metric since 2.6 started is that guard I think matches very poorly with Ewoks, just like generally.
I just want to point out that I think if you took beam cannons instead of missile launchers, you might have have less of this problem.
Back to this again.
Yeah, yeah. Beam cannons are good.
Yeah, if you had those beam cannons, you think you could just like take 10 droids or 12 droids off the table with every shot.
Yeah,
Every single time, by the way.
there is a satisfaction in taking it's kind of like flamethrowers. When you roll up to a table with flamethrowers and you see a squad with more than 10 people in it, you just get giddy. But 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work.
That is very fair.
Yep. Well, thank you for recounting your tales, and thank you for at least becoming honest towards the end about your round three.
What? What? I will say there was the best possible matchup I've ever seen in my entire life, which was her matchup uh against a full separatist invade, like the full B1 squad. And
Right.
they added it up. There were over 200 B1s on that table, which
Yes.
was so cool. I was not paying attention at all to my second game for like 15 minutes, just watching them chucking buckets of dice back and forth at each other,
Well,
which
maybe
was,
if you were paying attention, you would have remembered E-stems.
well, maybe.
Um, but yeah, like, hey, like I said before, uh, the the reason why you're going to continue to be the people's champion around here is that you were trying to make Yoda work. And hey, maybe maybe you're trying to throw bad money at bad money, but there could be something there. Me, on the other hand, I was trying to. It's unfair to say that like I was putting the six act list to the test, that I was going to be like the arbiter of whether this list is actually good or not, or whether it's purely just the fact that Ali Dyer is playing it. Because I don't think, I mean, I'm not. I mean, maybe I am the right sort of player who's like decent at the game, but not as good as Ali, to try this out. But I didn't have this sort of practice that one would, or like thinking ahead of time that one would want to have with this list. I did go 2-1. I lost the very last match, and it was a pretty close one.
Sounded very close from across the table.
And but just like, I'm not gonna do a full bat rep thing, but to quickly recount, the first one was the first match is where I actually made the most mistakes, but because it was a mirror match against Republic, and that I had an Anakin who could really bully his side. That allowed me to pull ahead on bunker assault. I will mention that my opponent Joe, we've had to play, like we have to play each other in every single tournament that we're in, whether it's in Blue Sky or down in Portland. So uh, we always laugh about it. He maybe lasts a little bit less because like I think that he's um like 0-6 against me so far. But
He's such
Joe,
a
the
goober. I love
the
him.
day is gonna come that you're gonna take me down. I can feel it. I will say that he did get a 22 dice flamethrower shot off on me. He had two flamer ATRTs, and I definitely um, concentrated hard on killing one of them before it got to me, and then I got distracted by like his Ahsoka Super Squad, and I got distracted by making sure that I was going to keep Anakin alive, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, he was like, okay, I'm going to move and flamethrower this. It was like the Captain Super Squad, and luckily they only took 5 wounds from like I think 14 hits or
Oh,
something like that. Hey, that's I mean that's average, right?
that's
Um,
crazy though. Rolling on a clone squad, rolling 14 defense dice from a flamethrower. Whew.
yeah, but I just like when it's like that, I don't think about it. I just roll the dice, and then I look down and I see that there's usually like relatively few blanks down there, and I'm just like, it'll be okay. Spoken like a true spoiled clone player, I know. But I was able to come away with that one. A big part of it was that I won a roll off that allowed Anakin to just like completely obliterate everybody on one full side of the table, and the actual fight was on the other side. And on bunker assault, that usually means that the one who completed their fight and won first is just going to win the whole thing. We'll get to more of that when I talk about round three. But round two was close the pocket, which was not my opponent Travis's choice. That was my card that I flipped at the very end. And he had a Grievous Asajj list. And like Grievous and Asajj are decent melee characters, but when you compare them to the trio of Anakin and Fives and Ahsoka as super squads, the melee strength is just like
It's not
the
close.
the difference is insane. Like
Mhm.
Fives, like I kid you not, five. We did a roll off of Asajj's 2-pip and Anakin's 2-pip, like the turn after we engaged. Um, and I won that roll off, which was certainly helpful because it allowed I don't think this really broke the game necessarily, but it allowed Fives to just charge Asajj, and she just died. Um,
Yeah, I mean
She's
that's
pretty
what she
flimsy.
does.
she doesn't have because she doesn't have any access to surges in that scenario. And so if you're coming in with fives and you get 10 hits, which is not that hard with that squad, then the chances are that the like law of averages that she's just going to immediately go from 5 to 0 and be gone. And that's exactly what happened. There were several surge results on her thing.
Too
And
bad. So sad.
yeah, it sucks. And I think she had Frey, but like I did a double move charge from range 1.5 away, so she didn't even get to get the surge token from that. And then it all just like kind of followed from there. It is, man, charging Dekkas with fives or charging Dekkas with Ahsoka. It's just like satisfying to see them go down just like so quickly. Um,
It is,
'Cause
but
you
you're almost wasting your charge for the points, to be honest.
kind of by then stuff was taken care of, and then I'll mention quickly that, man, I know I'm like the last person in the world to say this, but I had played a little bit of Bad Batch. I mostly played them back when Yoda could like exploit them, and then I hadn't played them a ton after that. But like when you have a list that's set up to be able to um, take advantage of it, uh, doing a turn one, we do what we do is such an insane threat. Uh, and like the way that I was using it is, and this is probably the way a lot of people use it, is just to like to make sure that they're charging into a relatively not dense side of the board so that they can not be mega worried about the return fire. But when they're coming in, it's pretty nasty. I actually I think I straight up just killed a Deca, and then I did that after one move after the scout, and then I was able to completely hide them in terrain after killing the Deca, which was pretty sick. And then in a different game, they and the Ahsoka squad shooting, because I had gotten them prepared positions from Garrison. Like they like two-shotted an Aqua Droid unit, uh, which is pretty nuts. Um, and so yeah, that game sort of fell apart just because close the pocket against the six act list is pretty tough for anybody. My third game was against Caleb, who Isaiah played round one, and he's a good player. He has a list that does he has like he has the three Sith, so like not Grievous, but the three actual Sith in there, and then also two Aquas and some Geos and a B1, and of course triple Decas. So has like a little bit of everything in there. And uh, there I I did like win the fight on one side pretty handily. But there were two problems. That one, he was able to hide a Geo squad that was a marked target, like behind terrain to the point that I couldn't kill it and contest at the same time because I only have 6 activations.
This is the
Uh,
problem.
yeah,
Like the
so
stuff like this.
right, exactly. And so that was problem one. Problem two was that I didn't do a good job of spreading out my marked targets. And I should have been like the issue with marked targets is that 2/3 of your list is marked in that scenario. And so like he was able to like hide his marked targets very well. And but I couldn't without just like refusing to actually compete for the points. But I needed a better plan for both bunker assault and for mark target specifically. So I think that I potentially would have been able to come away with that game, but like because I did a straight up fight on the side that had the majority of my list on it, um, he ended up coming away with that because it was like four activations of mine against like 9 of his. And when 3 of those are Sith Lords that he charged at me with like reckless abandon, by the way, like Maul, I mean, but it was to serve the greater purpose because when you have Decas and core behind you, you can do this. But he used the three Siths as missiles to just like get rid of all my core. And all of them had choke. All three of them did. And then they're swinging lightsabers at non-immune Pierce units. And so like when you pull all that together, and then of course Dooku's one pip and Maul and Asajj being able to move in from relative safety, especially Maul, moving in from relative safety, and then wreaking havoc. Like that was able to kill off like many, many, many clone troopers, and then Dooku finished Anakin off. Dooku often doesn't have to worry about Gemso because he just like hits all of his red dice, and then you get real sad.
Man.
Exactly. Very thematic, I guess. But essentially, what happened is that I lost the fight on that side, and that meant that I lost more marked targets, and then he could just like chill out and win the game. So that one was definitely on me. I think that if I came into that game with like a better plan and more practice with this, the real, I was always careful with my units, but there's like an extra level of being careful that you have to do with six act, I think, especially when it's marked targets that where you need to kind of like be back in the old school zone of blue player sabotage the evaporators type of a feel. And for those who don't get the
leads us
reference,
back here.
that's right. For those who don't get the reference, that was like a situation where you were already winning the game when the game started, and then all you needed to do was to not die.
That's not. That's like close to true, but like you definitely are not winning the game when it starts. You still have to tap your VAPs.
Okay, but okay, let's
Is
say
this some legacy conversation? I'm
this is a legacy
too
conversation.
six to understand.
It's crazy that like
Kids
you've
these
you've
days.
never played a game of Sabotage and
Yeah,
Bush Rapper.
yeah,
No,
Isaiah.
I have. I just
Okay.
very little.
I'm glad you're keeping us honest with the newer players, Isaiah. But yeah, for everybody else, it's essentially it is not much more than like going out, taking two actions with two of your core, and then hiding for the rest of the game, if the terrain was right. And it was often pretty rough for a red player in that situation because they had to go onto the attack, and if your list was like Padme Anakin clones, then it was or Yoda Padme clones, then it was very difficult to go on the attack against a list like that because
I'm feeling attacked right now. Like what's going on?
you should feel attacked. You did this to a lot of people back in the day. Kyle did it to a lot of people with imperialists. So everybody should feel attacked, except for me, of course. But getting back to this list, I think that that's sort of a scenario, bunker assault marked targets. I if I had a plan to like capture my home bunker on his strong side like once, and then run the hell away and consolidate on my strong side, or like on consolidate on his weak side for the rest of the game, I think that would have been a much better way to go about it because that conserves my mark targets. I can, kill the one mark target that was on his weak side, and then just like hope that by my running away from his Sith that they won't have the chance to like do a lot of diceless damage, right? Because Pierce and Choke, that's all stuff that gets around one of the main advantages of Clone Core, which is having it's basically surging red dice, especially the Ahsoka one. But you don't like when you get past the dice with like lots of Pierce and a whole bunch of instances of Force Choke, it really does add up. And
His triple choke was scary. It was real scary.
It's also like having a super squad in those situations is actually like less good than having a bunch of not super squads because often lightsabers are like overkilling your smaller squads.
Yes.
Right? Whereas in the super squads, they're just doing like full damage.
No dice were wasted on me. And then the whole time I'm also taking like little plinky stuff from Dekas that I'm never going to be able to touch because they're on his home bunker on his strong side. And so I'm never going to like be at the point that I can actually go on offense against those. And that's even more reason because a Deka, does have to make the decision to risk wheel mode if they want to chase down a core that's running away at full speed. And I didn't put him in the position where he had to make that choice
Sure.
because I just like
Yeah.
sat there. So anyway, lessons learned from me. I think that the question that I wanted to answer for myself and for the benefit of the cast so that we could talk about it was like, what is this list really? Because we've talked about it a lot. It's been sort of like this sort of like mystical thing from across the sea, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what to make of it. And this is my calibrate your enthusiasm moment of the episode because I'm going to say the thing that you're not supposed to say on a podcast, which is that I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. I think that it is in the right hands a potentially highly competitive squad in a similar way that EXD or Dooku Aqua is a highly competitive squad when it's in the right hands, but with a lower floor than those lists have because I think that you need to like really, really, really know what you're doing in order to get the value out of it. Um, it's possible that it may be sort of in the Ewok zone where like a skilled player will be able to squeeze like extra juice out of it. I think it's still too early to tell, but I mean, what I'll say is if people out there are curious about it, then try and get some practice first. So don't do what I do, but then give it a shot. Like I think that there's something to it. I don't think that it's like a mess, you know. I don't think that
It's
it's
tough to
something
be a
that needs to
mess
be
when you've only
dealt
got six
with.
activations.
Right, right. I mean, there's so
Mm,
many ways it can go wrong, and even when like Dave Grant demonstrated with the fact that he lost twice to EXD at UKGE, is that even when you're a skilled player who knows exactly what to do with the list, like there's some lists that are just going to have an advantage against you, and there's some scenarios that are just going to turn out like very badly for you. The list feels like it's always on a nice edge, but it was fun. I'll say that.
I just wanna run what you said back. I'm all about like just countering what you guys say verbatim today. Um, you just were like, yeah, it like could be in like the Dooku Aqua tier and then in like the EXD tier, and then you're like, it also is like you're always constantly on a knife's edge. And I just want to say, I've never played EXD or Dooku Aqua and felt like I was
You're
like
not.
on a knife's edge.
You're not. I mean, I think that what I am like you're right, and what I am saying is that it can it can perform at that level, but it is more unforgiving of mistakes than those lists are, and by the same token, it's also more unforgiving of bad variants, right? Like if you fluff a roll with a super squad, like that might be sort of the game
That's
for
just
you.
it.
Because like you don't have other opportunities to make up for that variance. But anyway, I'm not sure whether I'm gonna like play more of it. It was fun. It's not something that is like really like captured my heart per se. I think it's like a concept that certainly like it's been proven that it works in the right hands. Um,
If you're worried
and
about chess clocks, this is a great list to play
it's great for chess
then.
clocks. I mean, for I'm often worried about chess clocks, and I didn't have to worry a damn thing about it in this game. I spent a lot of time just like what I spent a lot of time in 40K zone where I was like watching my opponent play, and uh, I it was the first time experience where I had to use a D6 to track my passes, um, and because like usually I use my D6s to track like Deca shields, but
Sure,
like this time I
sure.
was like, okay, I got five, I got four, I got three, and yeah, you just like sort of chill. So it was kind of relaxing to play, aside from the parts where you actually have to do something, and then you're like, well, if I deploy if I deploy fives in the wrong place, I just lose the game. So um,
I am so interested in seeing that list pair up against an Ewok at some point. Just the like really competitively viable high activation list as compared to the six act. I think that would just be such an interesting fight.
I'm
I know
not
we got to see
sure.
Mowgli versus Ollie at WTC, but I
Mowgli has activations that are way easier to kill than Ewoks are.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
like
kind of my
a
thought.
Mark II, a naked veteran, like they just disappear at like a whisper. It's like you can just like lightly blow on them and then they float away with the leaves.
You can
But an
almost like
Ewok,
split fire.
right? You
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
exactly you can split fire and take care of two units. Yeah, like you could literally be like, okay, fives and shotgun at this Mark II, and then the rest of this other Mark II, and then they're dead.
They're both dead. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Ewoks are not in that situation, so I think that it would be. I think Ewoks would be a very tough matchup
I
if they
don't.
were played well.
I think
Yeah.
yeah, I'd agree.
Maybe I just if the I think the problem the Ewoks are gonna have is that like you still are eating like an Ewok squad with every melee with the shotgun units at least I would
Once you get
think.
in there, yeah,
Yeah.
once you get in there for sure.
And
With
the and
melee,
the
yes.
yeah, and the Ewok list just doesn't have as many activations as the Mowgli list, right? It's like generally sitting around 15, which is obviously a lot, but I feel like once you're down like five Ewok squads, like that game looks way different.
It could be for sure. But yeah, it's maybe we'll maybe if you could play, like I think I'm going to be playing Ewoks a little bit more around here, so. Maybe Isaiah, you could take six act in and we can actually try it out
Hoo, hoo,
for the
hoo.
sake of the
Give it a go.
cast. Yeah,
I
yeah.
can absolutely flub the list.
But yeah, just want to say congrats to Big Willie. He won with an Empire list. He admitted to me that part of the key to his success was that he decided to leave a riot control squad behind because he had taken that the last time that he had been in one of these tournaments. So yeah, good on him. And we will link to that Longshanks at the end. So,
Proof
fellas,
Empire too good.
what's that?
Proof Empire too good. We should nerf range
Yeah,
troopers.
Nerf Empire for sure. We're also here to talk about something else, though, gentlemen. This was I thought about this because Isaiah, you started playing like right before the 2.6 change happened, basically. So Legacy Legion to you is sort of like a very brief memory. And then I started playing at the like basically when the Clone Wars starter came out. So that would be like late 2019. It was good timing because this thing happened a couple months after that where we had a lot more painting time. And then Mike, you were in since the very beginning, is that right?
Yep. I pre-ordered like $600 of it before the game even came out.
Damn, you were
I
bought in.
ordered enough of everything to play it in both factions and fill out your four swords. So two ATSTs, two air speeders. Like I had done all the research and made sure I had all the things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Um, and so from these perspectives, I had this thought that the three of us could each come up with like from those eras that I mentioned. So like start of the game to Clone Wars release to 2.6 and then 2.6 onward. Um, that we would all try to come up with a list of what we consider to be the hottest messes in the history of the game. And we should we should define hottest mess. How would you like to define it for the cast, Mike?
I think I'd like to define it as rules interactions that they were just completely not fun and or broke the game.
Yeah. It it's like it's one of those things you would know when you see it, because you would hear grumblings about it at the local store. You would see people talking about it on the Discord. They're like X is a problem, Y is a problem, et cetera, et cetera. You, the listener, are probably already thinking of a few things that are going to end up on this list. But what we're going to try to do, we each thought of five ish. I have a couple honorable mentions if they come necessary, but um, uh, of what we consider to be the hottest messes of that era. And we're going to talk about it. And basically, we're going to try and come up with a Hall of Fame, or so to speak, of hot messes. And we're going to try and come up with a champion, a runner up, and then, eight, or like a champion, a second place, and eight runners up, basically unranked after that. So let's just dive into it. Uh, Isaiah, you are the guest of honor here. So I want to start with you. Uh, Sort of funny that we're starting with the most recent era, but generally, I think we're trying to go from like the ones that we think are the least strong to the strongest at the end. But so what is your number five hottest mess choice for 2.6?
Okay. Ooh. Least strong. See, some of the I have one on here that I'm so confident none of you or nobody has heard of that I think is probably the biggest deal, but it's completely untapped because it's not viable in competitive play. So I'll leave that to one. Um,
Okay.
I
Okay.
think my number
Can't wait to hear it.
five weakest, like the weakest one that was just annoying, would probably be when there was the short period of time where we were all freaking out about the E-stems change.
Yeah, that
When
was that was
E-stems
sort of
got
funny.
shifted to the start of your activation,
Yeah.
and everyone was just absolutely, which turned out to be a misprint and was not an actual rules change, but just completely invalidated the card in almost like 99% of uses, where they changed eSIMs from you take the damage, you basically bank the damage till the end of your next activation to you bank the damage till the start of your next activation.
Yeah, yeah, there was I think that this was one where nobody was defending it. And everybody was like, what the hell's going on? And then
This was
it turned
like
out to just be a typo.
this was like 2 days after I played that like Yoda Eastims like mega list that Brian had been like
Yeah,
taunting, and
Mike felt personally attacked.
I was like, oh man, maybe this is good. Maybe this is how I'll play Yoda. And then like 2 days later, they're like, yeah, and we're taking Eastims out, basically. And I was like, oh man. Which it doesn't matter anymore because BattleNet is gone. So, but
Yeah, they
uh,
killed the list anyway, just because they
yeah,
hate you, Mike.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a good one. That one may end up left out of the Hall of Fame just because it got fixed so quickly,
Oh
and
yeah.
it was only a thing for like a couple weeks. But yeah, that was a good one. I had actually forgotten all about that, but it certainly generated buzz when we were all wondering like why why did they do this? I can't believe you've done this. Um, Mike, let's talk about one from the old era of Legion. Not to call you old or anything, but what's your number five?
Yeah, so I do have two on my list that are like kind of in the cloney era too. Um, so my
That's all right. We
five are
we can
not
flex around
completely
it.
restricted.
Yeah.
The one that is lowest on my totem pole is infinite range sniper rifles.
Okay. Yep. I knew this was gonna
So
come up.
so when sniper rifles were originally printed in the game, they were all infinite range. You could shoot any distance, didn't matter. So there were like range 10 shots being taken like often. And you would just kind of like keep your snipers on the edge of the board. And you, unless your opponent had snipers, they weren't touching your snipers,
And you had Long
essentially.
March at this time. So
Oh
you
yeah,
could
you had long march rollout, the whole, I mean, yeah. So yeah, infinite range snipers was I would say it was fun, but a lot of people I think would disagree with that
Who would
assessment.
say that was fun to have a sniper in the back corner and he's just like never gonna be at risk and he's just like shooting at your army the entire time? That sounds terrible.
Yeah, I mean, unless you have snipers and your opponent doesn't, in which case it was. I mean, this was also like because partly because of this, like almost all competitive Legion lists before Clone Wars were like triple snipers, strike teams. Like, and this was
Their
also back when.
activation padding and the infinite range
Yeah,
snipers. So it was pretty
yeah,
good.
yeah. You just like they picked up a model every turn, and that was fine.
Yeah, although past, I do feel like they often just did a suppression because like past cover at the time, if people had covered, it would be like, the rebels would roll one surge and then the Empire would roll hit surge. It just seemed like every time.
Yeah, it definitely was harder it was certainly harder to breach cover back then,
Yeah, yeah.
by a
So
lot.
that did mitigate it. But yeah, everybody I've talked to is most of the people, like aside from you, Mike, have talked about infinite range sniping with disdain. So that one might end up on the Hall of Fame after all. I'm gonna do one that's like a little bit more specific for the Clone Wars era. Uh, it's technically more than one character, but it's really one character for a certain period of time, and that is Secret Mission via R2D2 when was he 35 points, Mike?
He was
Is
35
that
points when he
oh my
originally
God.
released. Yeah.
So 35 I guess really we're talking about 35 point R2D2 as like being the thing that's number 5 on my list. This was a small aspect of something that is going to be much higher on my list as a little preview. But there was just this period of time where like you literally could just not think about it. You would just toss in R2D2, and then the rest of your army would go fight. And the entire time, your opponent has to like have their eye on this little trash can that's like all the way on the other side of the map, knowing that like if he gets into the end zone on turn 6, then my VP situation is going to be one against me, and so like he was killable, but often if he distracted like 2 units from your opponent, then that was like all you needed to like take your army and wreck their army. And so it was a bad time. It was why he became much more expensive, and then he just like kind of went away. But for a while, R2 was just kind of a menace. Like people get really, really upset about the existence of R2, the nature of Secret Mission. Padme, it always felt like it was riskier for her. She's a more expensive unit. And
She's also good at other things.
yeah, right. I mean, and you were giving up the thing that is also going to be higher on my list by having her try to run into the opponent's end zone instead of just like kind of sitting there generating tokens. So it was never quite as much of a thing. But yeah, that's my number 5 for consideration. I'm not positive whether that'll make the final Hall of Fame, but that's what I got. Isaiah, you're next. What do you got for us?
I have another one that didn't last a super long time, but was just kind of a fun snafu. Whenever Bad Batch launched and we lost, you had to pick between having Bad Batch in your list and having the Hunter unit upgrade in your list because Hunter was exclusive to that upgrade for that one took a little bit longer for them to come out and fix. I think that one was there was actually a tournament that happened before they came out and fixed it.
On the hunt now.
It is now on the
But
hunt.
thankfully, we don't have that silly interaction anymore. Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? It's like trapping yourself within the walls of your own rules. But yeah, it, definitely like a stupid thing that that got some yucks around local tournaments. But yeah, luckily it didn't become a huge deal. Um, Mike, what do you got next?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go with corner peeking and or
Oh,
I'm put corner peeking and corner sniping in the same bucket.
Terrain scoping.
Terrain scoping.
Yeah.
They abuse the
This is
same
going up
rules.
there. I'm already mad. Go ahead.
So
I don't know. What this
yeah,
is.
I love this was
Oh
another,
yeah, let's go ahead. Describe it for Isaiah.
okay, so um originally when you shot a unit, you could only kill the models that you could see.
hmm
Okay. Which means that like if you were behind a building, you could kind of like angle yourself so that you could only see the heavy weapon. Right.
So
Oh,
this would be like I have my hands up
Yeah.
like this to represent the terrain, and so Isaiah, the way my hands are, I can only see your right shoulder, and therefore, if I do 1 damage to you, it's going to mean that your right shoulder falls off. Sorry.
Right.
Now imagine if your right shoulder was your Z6.
oh.
So you could scope people's heavy weapons out of their squads without
That sounds
killing.
infuriating.
Oh,
That sounds like
in my
So
very
you
first
say
in-
infuriated, but if you asked me or Kyle 2 or 3 years ago, this
Once
was one of
again.
the defining traits of like competitive Legion in finding these shots. Okay.
Why did people listen to you if you had opinions like that? It's unbelievable. You thought that terrain scoping was a good thing for the game.
I'm not sure I'd say
Damn
it was
you,
a
Mike.
good thing for the game, but it was a competitive skill that you needed to know in order to play the game at a high level, you know? Because if you don't know these things, like you would have to completely you had to reconsider how you do cohesion, right? Because you got to make sure that like you're kind of like your heavy
Yeah.
weapon is like in the middle of your squad at all times, right? So that they can there's always like some extra because
Bubble wrap them.
in
You'd have
a
to bubble wrap
world
them.
of infinite range snipers, snipers can use buildings pretty easily to check what they can and can't see.
And even better, if like all you had to do was get it to where you could only see the leader in the heavy weapon, because the leader was always invincible until the rest of the squad was dead, which
Yes.
meant that, if those were the only two that you could see, then the heavy weapon also dies. So like in that other thing is like, Isaiah, if I can see your head and your right shoulder, it's like, well, I'm not allowed to shoot your head, so I have to shoot your right shoulder, and then yeah, like I said, your Z6 is gone.
And
I keep
also in that scenario where you can only see the unit leader, you could also scope people's unit leaders if they're the only thing you could see. And that model actually died, and
and
that unit
replaced
leader would get teleported to where one of the other models
Mm.
in the squad would be, right?
right.
So you could like, if somebody had like poorly cohered their units or whatever, like you could like knock their unit 2 inches back by like scoping out the leader.
I love the constant hey, what's this thing that was a Hall of Shame from Old Legion? And Mike goes, "Oh, this was great. Let me tell you about the good old days when we
Yeah,
used
man,
to
yeah,
be
yeah.
able to just really punish somebody."
Well, this also ended up mattering a lot for snipers in that you could also protect your units this way, right? So,
Yeah.
like with the sniper strike teams, you would just have the heavy weapon out. Um,
It'd be a two attack unit because they'd basically have Katarn.
yes, but better than that because when since the sniper was the leader, it teleported behind the building when it died.
Yeah.
Somebody
It
did
was
that exactly once to me in a game of Legacy Legion, and I went, "Well, that's weird." And then they changed the game, so it wrecked, I guess. I
Yep.
don't know.
In my very first Invader League, I literally lost three Z6s in one game from terrain scoping, and that taught me the lesson the hard way. So that's why I keep using a Z6 as an example. Okay, so my next one is also one that didn't come up often, but when it did come up, I thought that it was. I personally thought that this was one of the dumbest things I'd ever heard of, that the rules allowed for this to happen. But this is barricade blocking. Folks might remember that there was this relatively less used force power called force lift, where the only thing, like literally the only thing that it did was that it moved barricades around, and it allowed you to actually start the game with an extra barricade. Um, and something that you could do. It wasn't like a great strategy, but it was a really infuriating one. So I'm not like naming names here, but the people who did this, you know who you are. Uh, you could, for instance, like tap your evaporator, and then you could array barricades around it so that literally, like between the barricades and terrain or whatever, that it was literally illegal to set a trooper unit next to the objective token. And so by using force lift, you have blocked your opponent from actually scoring points. And it was never actually, I don't think it was ever actually like, I forget whether it was truly dealt with in the rules before force lift just like disappeared when 2.6 happened. It was like not a winning strategy, a repeatably winning strategy, especially when the game became even more shooty than it had been before that. But I just thought it was super dumb to be able to like stop people from playing the game. And
Sounds
it
infuriating.
didn't have a lot of impact, but it was really, 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 really dumb. Okay, what do you got next, Isaiah?
So I guess I misunderstood the assignment. I only have things that are silly little fun ha-has, and y'all's are downright
Well,
evil.
I
So
think
this is
I do
another
think that a lot of these were fixed by Legion 2.6.
well, this is another
There have been
silly
less of
little
these.
haha that I don't think anybody actually really cares about. This one couldn't matter at all to anybody who's actually like plays the game with any sort of skill. But right before Adepticon, there's a very unknown battle force called the Wookiee Battle Force, and they put this little
You
tiny
jerk.
thing
I hate
out
you.
there that kind of like screwed with it, I guess. I don't really know how this battle force works. I don't think anybody really plays it, so I don't think it matters.
I'm just
But
typing
do
this in
you,
the
do you
Hall
know
of
what I'm
Fame
talking
already.
about, Evan? Do you have any idea what I
Yeah,
might be referencing?
you're being a little bit facetious and mean right now, and I don't appreciate it. But yeah, you're talking about the something that I think we talked about the very first episode we had you on, which was that there was like a 2 month period that thankfully ended like 3 weeks ago where the Wookiee Battle Force didn't work when you were using defensive battle shields. We've talked
Yeah.
about it here. It sucked. It was stupid. It really sucked to find out about it when I was on the plane over to Adepticon with, my Wookiee Battle Force like stashed in the overhead bin above me, and I was just like thinking, well, uh, this just got a lot worse. But
And it,
hey,
yeah.
it's all good. That one, I'm gonna campaign for that one, making the Hall of Fame just for personal reasons. But yeah, that was a hot mess for like the 5 people in the world that it affected.
I
Um,
think that one was the most egregiously uh where other things egregiously set you up for success. This one just shut down entire rules interactions that were very clearly meant to work together, right?
yeah,
Most of the other things were things that you could exploit. This was one that just the way the rules were worded just shut it all down, kind of thing. And as far as I'm aware, I don't know of any others that super just locked out abilities.
yeah. There's one other that's like sort of similar that is continues to be a hot mess, but I'm just gonna see if you mention it. But we'll get to that at the end. Mike, what do you have next?
Yeah, so the next one I have is infinite clone token sharing.
Yep.
Uh,
Wait, wait, Mike. This is a Clone Wars thing.
so I thought we were doing like from like each of our perspectives,
Yeah, I mean, hey,
like
that's
the
fine.
biggest hurdles, right?
I yeah. So
This is the only one that I have on here that is after the Clone Wars release. So
this one's certainly on my list, but
I'm sure it was.
yeah, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, being able to spend infinite aims or dodges or surges on all your units turned out to be pretty good when you could just make all of your shots, Z6 shots, 10 hits.
And
Yeah,
I'm actually going to broaden this
sure,
to say legacy clone sharing,
sure.
because not
To
only was
include
it infinite,
standbys.
but there was also this green token, even though it was mostly gray, which for like 6 months when I started the game made me not realize that this was a shareable token. But yeah, Isaiah, what do you know of the arrow standby sharing?
It's it's uttered with like hushed tones and like scared looks, and then someone will say Rexstar and throw a smoke bomb and disappear into the distance. I don't.
So I'm going to talk about Rexstar in a minute. Standby sharing actually was his own thing. Rexstar certainly took advantage of it, but it was a thing outside of the true like badness of what Rexstar was like. And maybe I'm even going to broaden it to say like legacy token sharing, because even after they took it away
Big,
from clones,
bigger and
it's
bigger.
still it still hung around in the form of Padme, especially, and sometimes even Anakin when it came to standby sharing, to the point where like both clones and exemplar were like slowly whittled away in terms of power level as the game went on. But
So I know
yeah.
that I'm like heavily biased here, but as being perhaps the person that has abused
One
this
of the
the
biggest
most
perpetrators
in
of the
Legion's
badness
lifetime,
here. Yeah.
but I actually think the exemplar on Anakin and Padme was actually like fine. Like it might not have been fun, but
It
I'm not sure that it was unbalanced.
it didn't ruin balance the way that clone standby sharing absolutely ruined balance.
Oh, I
It
mean,
was, I think that the exemplar stuff was more negative play experience than anything else.
yeah.
So he
Uh,
got tempted.
He had tempted before. It used to be.
it's
It
funny
No,
used
but it
that
was
to.
better.
What?
Like it was a better play experience before.
Oh yeah, certainly. Well, part of that was because the original version of Tempted never actually got used by anybody. Because Anakin had so many other like good things to do with his upgrade slots that putting Force Choke on there never really seemed like it was the best idea. Even back when Force Choke was like really good, by the way. Um,
When you could
but
pick your model and just
That's right. When you could like once you could instead of terrain scoping, you're like choke scoping
Yep.
the Z6. But yeah, I think we're gonna get to more of like what the true ultimate mega terrible nature of clone infinite sharing turned out to be in a couple minutes. But yeah, like just like legacy clone sharing in general, even outside of the list, it continued to be a problem, and it was definitely a negative play experience. I did it. I
Felt pretty
stand by shared with
positive
my
to
brother
me.
so many times. I'm sure it did, Mike. You jerk. But yeah, that one is definitely worthy of the haul. So yeah, my next one, my next two are like, are yeah, my next one is a little bit more along the lines of sort of the state of meta, and so you could say that it was like the various combinations of rules and points and objectives that made things this way. But my next entry is basically the nature of range 5 at the very end of Legacy Legion, where we were in this zone that for a while because many people, including this podcast, and I put like all three of us in that bucket, hadn't quite yet realized like how good EXD was at abusing range 5 until Worlds 2 years ago, or God, I guess it was last year happened. But right before that, there was a lot of abuse that you perpetrated, specifically, Mike, with one Yoda, and then eventually, like, I mean, with Yoda and arcs, just like slapping people at range 5. They weren't able to do anything back, like ever. And you would just like whittle them down until they died. And if they tried to attack you, then Yoda would come and smack your face a couple times. And then he would send your arc trooper, like your full arc squad, to relentless, hit them, and then run away so that they can't be shot back. And then when it was their turn, or like, and then you could like do it again with them. It was really dumb.
It was awesome. Is what
Yeah,
it was.
Mike saying it was awesome, but just generally at the end of Legacy Legion, it just became this huge, stupid shooting match.
every
Um,
single thing you say, and Mike's like, it was great. It was
well, Mike might be a little bit of a villain in this story, and we haven't even gotten to the most villainous aspect of Mike's most villainous aspect yet, which is in my number one slot, by the way, Mike. So look forward to it. But yeah, just this was a big part of why I think 2.6 was received as well as it was because I think that by the end of Legacy Legion, we were just tired of what the game was, which was just like, how good are you at shooting? Clones, extremely good. EXD, extremely, extremely good to the point that they were actually wiping out of the clone lists that weren't able to throw as many dice out with their mega range 5 shots. And, it is fortunate that Ali sort of like came in with a counter meta list and won that way. So at least Worlds didn't end up. I'm sorry, Luke Cook, being won by EXD. But yeah, it was a rough world at the end of Legacy Legion. I think it was part of why we were so welcoming. But yeah,
Yeah, I
range
mean,
5 just got crazy good.
I feel like it wasn't even like I'm not sure range 5 was the problem. The defensive tech was the issue, right?
Yeah, maybe that's
Like
right. It's like fortressing at the end of Legacy.
yeah, like it was, whether you were playing like Pike Capo spam or, the Anakin Padme Pikes list
Right,
or
right.
or whatever, like, the reason people decided to move to EXT was to break the castles,
Yeah,
right? Like that was
yeah.
the whole point.
Yep.
Um,
It could shoot at arcs from far away and actually win.
yeah, and like nothing else in the game could do that. Everything else
Yep.
had to close to range 3 to be effective, and by the time you got to range 3, like you were dead, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, so you want my phase two to start shooting at you now also, huh? I was like, well, okay. Yeah, it was a rough time. Isaiah, what do you have next?
So this one gets into something that was so strong they had to put a little green frog in the ground.
Mm,
Uh, when we first got Bad Batch, they were, I believe, the first unit in Republic with steady, right?
yes.
Or relentless. Um,
Natively.
natively.
Anakin got relentless. Old Anakin got relentless at the very end of his tree, so to speak. But
True, but he was, I mean, his
and
threat
then
was
Yoda's two pip, and so
charge
yeah,
anyway.
right.
It was the Yoda Bad Batch pairing that just uh was so powerful where what you would do is you'd utilize Yoda's guidance to give a move and a steady shot to Bad Batch. That was just devastating. I mean, just absolutely overpowering. I'm not mad at all because it's definitely not what caused me to lose
I was
last
gonna
year's
say,
Evergreen.
are you thinking specifically of you're losing at Evergreen when you
Yeah.
make the
I mean,
statement?
but it was devastating. It was so powerful, and there was nothing. I mean, there really wasn't much you could stand that could stand up to it because it just would hit so hard. And I think they rightfully took that interaction away from Yoda Bad Batch, but in doing so, just put charge or put a lot of the standby uses in the ground. Put uh you know put Yoda 10 feet under, made him just very difficult. Um, and I mean, the change in that what they effectively did was said that you couldn't activate charge, relentless, or steady outside of your activation, which affected so many people. Most Saber users across the board.
Defected the standby token
Yeah,
generally.
yeah. Basically, anybody who was what we used to do is you'd use standby to say, okay, yeah, I don't whack you. Go ahead, run away from me. Go ahead. I'll I'll come after you and I'll eat you then, or I'll go eat somebody else. It doesn't matter. Um, but now
Isaiah,
that's not a thing.
I think this is a very strong entry, Isaiah, because this is it. It was a bit of a hot mess that I actually, in my opinion, became a bigger hot mess when it was fixed. Um, because I don't know, I still feel this way, and whenever the next time we're gonna talk to the Wills, I'm not gonna like bring it up because of sour grapes, but believe me, if it comes up in a conversation naturally, then I'm not gonna be shy about it. But I really wish that sort of interaction was back. Obviously, by now we've all gotten used to the fact that that's gone away. But they could have just changed "we're not regs" to say that you
Yep.
can't be guidanced,
Put
and
the
that would have
same
dealt with it.
interaction requirement on we're not regs.
But this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, is that I actually don't. So first of all,
I knew you were gonna
I
say
don't
this, Mike.
I don't
By
think
the
this
way,
was a problem on Bad Batch, frankly, but I do think that this is ridiculous on Super Squads. Like that's the issue. The issue is
yeah,
not actually Bad Batch. The issue is like Yoda relentlessly in fives with a shotgun, and like that squad's way better than Bad Batch at shooting.
it's
Gen
fewer dice, but more modifiable on Bad Batch and with Pierce. So I mean,
No
it gets
doubt.
pretty close. At least a full Bad Batch, I should say.
Yeah, I feel like that like once they slam into melee with Relentless, it's kind of like it's a different ball game at
Yes,
that
that
point.
that that is true. That is true. So maybe at the end of the day, the fact that they did realize earlier that the idea of Yoda two pipping around super squads would have been problematic. That's why they took it away. But yeah, I think we can still miss the way that the rules used to be. Mike, what do you have next?
Yeah, what do I have next? So this is a throwback that I'm not sure either of you are going to be aware of. I'd like to talk about the original printing of Coordinated Fire.
Oh yeah, I do know about this, but tell
Okay.
Isaiah.
All right. So the original printing of Coordinated Fire allowed you to like pass off as many aim tokens as you spent. So originally you were like, okay, I'm gonna give this to a short trooper. I'm gonna have that short trooper like have offensive push or whatever. And like before that shore trooper goes, I'm gonna like spotter them. So that shore trooper starts with like 3 aim tokens, and then it spends all 3 and then hands 3 to the next core unit, which maybe also has an aim from target. So that core unit's
Gotcha.
got 4, and then that unit is spending 4 and trading down the line, right? So you basically just ended up with like 6 core units that hit on all their dice.
You had to kill one and break the chain then. You had to,
Yes,
even though
yeah,
you had the aims,
which
you had to
was
go,
tough.
you're the guy. You got the football. Get him.
Yes, yeah, very
It was the
much.
trouble with tribbles with aim tokens. They just like kept multiplying.
Yeah.
Uh, it was
Obviously, you
pretty
only get to
stupid.
do it with one now, which
Yeah,
is still
yeah.
very good. But yeah, in the before times, this was clone token sharing before clone token sharing existed.
Right,
Um, this was that basically. So that was
right.
back like I think the only Empire heroes that existed were like Vader, Palpatine, Veers. Maybe you had Krennic at that point, but.
He was the fourth one, wasn't he?
Yeah, like,
Yeah,
but
those are the OGs, Vader,
yeah,
Palpatine, Pierce.
there was no Clone Wars faction. It was just Rebels and Empire. So you can imagine what those dice pools were doing to Rebel units.
Yeah, and especially, like yeah, you were and like if you had Shore Mortar, you had like a lot of activations. And you were just even with 800 points, you were just passing those around. And I think they fixed that before Iden came out. I
I think
think
so. It's a
because that would have
little,
been a
it's a
real
little,
problem with
it's a little,
ISF. Yeah.
it's a little
Um,
hazy at
yeah,
this point.
exactly.
It was core unit only, so it
Oh yeah, that's right. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay. So what do I have next? Oh yeah. So um, my top two are both my top two are both lists, but they are lists that I think did a particularly rough thing to the game, and that they were able to exist because of a variety of rules things. This one what in particular was more just because of a confluence of balance issues. But I'm gonna mention Blizzard Force here. Um, there was a 6 month period of time where Blizzard Force was just wreck and face, and former host of the podcast Kyle Dornbos, he put it upon himself. He made it his holy mission to go and win. Did he win like 3 major events with Blizzard Force, or it was something stupid? He just like kept putting him away, and then Austin Miller, I think he won like 2 major events with Blizzard Force like around the same time. TFT and its affiliates were trying hard to the point where I even put on the Spurs to play Blizzard Force at LVO and lost to Kyle before he beat you to win LVO with Blizzard Force. Uh, so like the top four was half Blizzard Force. And
501st before it was cool.
there was 501st before it was cool. Exactly. Yeah, you were playing 501st before it was cool.
Yeah.
And it just it warped everything. And then it turned out that there were 2 people in the world who made a list that could specifically beat Blizzard Force. And even though one of those people, Luke Cook, I think later admitted that he didn't think that his list could beat Dark Troopers, which was another meta monster at the time, but he just like, put his faith in the heart of the cards that he wouldn't run into it, and he didn't, and then he ended up winning Worlds. But
We
the
call
other
him Luck
person,
Cook for a reason.
that's right, the other person was Lila Claire, who beat Kyle on the way to getting runner-up in Worlds. And so that was yet another example of a counter pick winning. I think that was a tradition that you also espoused, Isaiah. But despite all that, I think Blizzard Force was still half of the top 8 that year, or maybe 3 out of 8 of the top 8 at Adepticon. And it was everywhere until they finally nerfed it in like 3 different ways, and then it became more of like a normal army. But yeah, it was rough for a while. Blizzard Force. It just the battle cards it could use were just insane. Uh, they Most lists out there would just be put in very tough choices. where it was like lose, lose, lose situations when it came to the battle cards you were picking against something that had both Vader and a really good turn one Alpha Strike card and force beaters. It was a lot. So that's what I got. Isaiah, what is is this your last one?
This is it. Yep, this is my my top guy.
What's your top guy?
So, because I am so confident that nobody here has interacted with this, because it's a very silly rules thing, but it's not competitively viable. Here's why. It's in I experienced this at Adepticon, which is where I learned about this, but not in the Worlds tournament during the uh hazardous or the dangerous environments game. There is an insane rules interaction that I am very we called over. I think it was one of the wills we called over because our judge went, "What? No, you can't. No way." And he came over and he went, So I'm going to read you the text and I want to see if you can pick up on what is just mental about this. So for those who don't know, Dangerous Environments is an alternative game mode that is not meant for hyper competitive play, but is kind of a more thematic sort of thing. There is a mechanic where at the beginning of each round you roll a red dice and it applies some effect to the battlefield. Have either of you actually played a Dangerous Environments game?
No, but I've read the rules once and I remember thinking this is gonna break everything and I'm never playing this ever. And I suspect what you're about to read off is
there is only one. That's the only time I've ever played it, and it was, it was fun. It was really fun. I want to be clear. It was a lot of fun, but it was not a competitive experience. Under specifically the Dangerous Environment flying base, the most common roll result of shield on a red defense dice, it activates the following effect. This round, when a unit is at range 1 of an advantage token, which are pre-placed out on the battlefield, it gains jump 2 as a free action, and it treats its maximum speed as 3. Did either of you hear what is absolutely insane about that? I'm going to read it one more time real quick. This round, while a unit is at range 1 of an advantage token, it gains free action, jump 2, and treats its maximum speed as 3.
I mean, it's a free action.
I did not say trooper unit. I said unit.
Oh.
Sure.
I got hit in the face with a speed 3 snail tank, making 3 speed 3 moves across the board to lock me in my deployment zone. It was mental. That was a crazy experience. Because you would think it's a trooper, right? Oh well, maybe it's just
oh man,
only on maybe it's in the car, like in the rules for jump. Jump is only trooper. No, it's the snail tank jumped over like a spire. It was awful.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of what would be the most hilarious unit to benefit from that, and like snail is definitely up there. AAT I think would also be high up there.
It was a very weird experience, and it's the reason I included it is because it is an official mode, like it's officially supported mode of play. It's not competitive, but man, that was a weird experience.
Man, we need to do a Dangerous Environments tournament locally like yesterday.
And I'll bet you'll never guess who I was playing when she exploited that and absolutely put me in the ground with it.
Oh, the true sour grapes.
Right.
Hey man, like listen, your wife clearly just has a better understanding of exploiting the rules than you do, and that's okay.
You could have done it with your ISPs.
Yeah.
They're already fast. They're
already speed 3. But they could jump. They could have dealt with the biggest problem that ISPs have, which is like bumping into stuff. And they wouldn't have had to worry about that.
God,
that's pretty great actually.
That's crazy, right?
I like that one a lot. Yeah, so I'm gonna write speed 3 jumping vehicles in dangerous environments. Mike, what is your last one?
Yeah, so my last one was back in the time when force push was only 10
Yeah,
points.
I knew this was going to be your number one.
It was only 10 points. You could. It made it so that you had to play at least like 8 inches away from all table edges at all times. Because if your unit leader touched the side of the board as a result of force push, your unit was instantly disintegrated.
Force push off the board.
Force push off the board,
But you could just
result
kill
of
someone
Instant
by just
unit death.
yes. So a play pattern was end of turn as my last activation, I'll force push a unit towards the board edge, and then I immediately go force push them off the board as my first activation, and then go do whatever my Jedi is going to do normally. And you could just delete units that way. Um, not an insanely fun thing, but that was, force push perhaps in its most powerful state. Um, ever. Uh,
perhaps.
perhaps. I mean, it ended up that like most games ended up being centralized around the table. Like once you've figured out that this is a thing that you had to play around, you just didn't put your units near the board edges, but ever. But yeah, that was a thing that could happen. That was how force push originally worked.
And yeah, I mean, like the newer players may not even know that that like in the old panic you would move towards the board edge, and if you hit the board edge, you would lose that unit.
Yeah, I actually greatly preferred that, to be completely honest. Like I don't know. I well, let me take a step back. I liked that when you panicked, rather than being rooted in place, your unit ran
I
towards the closest board edge, which I
I
think
think
made a lot of sense.
I think they could have kept the running away and gotten rid of the dying on the board edge part, and I think that it would have made panic a little bit more meaningful feeling than it feels today. Although they've done all this stuff with objectives that they've kind of like added a new meaning to panic, but uh, it I feel like they could have solved that by changing the term panics to pinned,
Yes, 100%.
because that
Yeah,
like that more exemplifies like what is actually happening in the game at this point.
yeah.
But yeah, force pushing off the edge is pretty wild. Like
Yeah.
I didn't actually even believe that when I think Izzy told me about it the first time, but yeah, boy, they 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 dealt with that relatively quickly, right? It was like
I'd say it was like a year or so,
okay,
But like I mean, this was a result of a rule that if you ever moved off the board, your unit was removed from play, right? So
right,
it wasn't just force push, it was
compulsory moves.
compulsory moves.
Yeah,
If a
Which on my
compulsory
mind wouldn't
move
immediately even said
flew
that.
you off the board, like your unit was gone.
yep,
There was a couple other like, weird edge cases that resulted in and obviously like if you panic off the board, your guy's gone, right? So
yep.
uh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one for ending up high on our final list. We'll see if it ends up higher than my last one, which is of course Rexstar, and it's nearly equally awful cousin Arcstar. Um, for those who don't know, Rexstar was a combination of all of the unfortunate rule situations that happens to basically coalesce into a an otherworldly, like Cthulhu-esque blob of terrifying badness, which resulted in I'm going to narrate what happens. Like first of all, between aggressive tactics and the phase 2 clone trooper, there are many, many surge tokens everywhere. You can infinitely hang on, I'm not even get to that part yet. Number two, um, fives was out when this came out, and so via fives, and was there something else that like the order would give two, and then there would be fives, and then was Clone Commander out when this first happened, or this was
Yes.
he was okay.
Yes.
So between the Clone Commander and fives and the command and the order, you had 4 units that would be able to shoot their entire complement of guns at 1 extra range as long as they had an aim token. You did not need the aim action originally, and because they all moved out onto the field with a scout move, either from Recon Intel or from Rex. And because they all had a copy of Offensive Push on them, which allowed them to get an aim from that scout move, is that there were a bazillion aims on the table. Now, you
So
might,
I
if
want to
you're
be clear here. because this was set up very deliberately
Yeah.
that only a number of the phase twos had offensive push. The rest of them had Overwatch.
Correct. Yeah. So the phase twos that were doing the round one shooting had to push, and then the rest had Overwatch. So you could take advantage of the other silly thing with clone rolls at the time. And so you would have 4 units that would move out onto the field with their scout move, and then on turn one they would all be able to take move shoot or even aim shoot if they didn't have to move, range forward shots. And so all of these would be 10 dice attacks where there were aims everywhere, there were surges everywhere.
I also want to point out here, sorry. I just this was a list I played a lot of, and
It sure was.
this was also back when you could tap offensive push during a scout move, so you
Right.
could have the aims
It was there on turn 0.
Yes.
And so you could infinitely share all of these tokens to basically have something close to guaranteed like 9 hits per attack. And you weren't going to get lucky cover saves. Like 2 of those are going to go to cover, and then the rest you were just going to have to take. And you just deleted units. You like there would be turns where you shot at a bunch of like rebel troopers and whatever, and they were just like 4 core down at the end of turn 1. Or you had killed both their commanders by the end of turn 1. If they walked out their Jedi and they didn't have a dodge token, and you were able to get view on them, guess what? Like theirs dead. And then after that, if you can survive the initial onslaught, then you have to deal with the fact that there's usually like a Weenus phase 1 that's like hanging out in the back, and his job is to sit there and take dodge standby or aim standby every single turn. Use cohesion to kick out a mini so that mini can share. It was range 1 at the time. With cohesion, it really wasn't that hard, but that mini could share a standby token with a unit with Overwatch that was like basically as far as like range 2.5 from the original mini that took the standby token. And then they could forward cohere a guy ahead of them, so that the standby token from the phase 1 all the way in the back could be used by the Overwatch unit that was in the front to basically shoot at anything that moved on the board ever. And back then, standby tokens did not need to shoot at the triggerer of the standby, which meant that you were putting your entire army at risk by doing literally anything. Even if your opponent had a sniper, that
You
phase
couldn't
1
shoot the standbys off.
could be hiding in the back to the point that you can't actually even see them to shoot off the standby token.
Yeah. The thing was, at this point, infinite snipers had been dealt with.
Right.
And so
standby sharing was right there.
So the issue actually was that even if there was no line of sight blocker, if the Rexstar player had done their range bands properly, you couldn't actually get to the unit sharing the standby token without triggering it with a sniper rifle.
Yep. So how does that sound, Isaiah? Does that sound like a good, fun, fair game to you?
I'm so glad Caitlin didn't play this game then.
Oh yeah. Also, I forgot to mention that while this is going on, there's this little guy R2D2 who is trundling up the side of the board to just like add insult to injury that while your entire army is dead, because like you're having to worry about your actual fighting, is that your opponent is just like getting a free victory point for 35 points worth of investment. It was the dumbest thing. And it lasted for way too long. I think Rexstar was a list that existed for like 8 months.
Well, there were multiple iterations of it, right?
Yes.
So it originally came out, and people were like, "Oh, the standby sharing is way too good," right? And so we were like, they nerfed. We couldn't share standbys anymore, and then everybody was like, "Well, screw it. Let's just take more aim tokens."
Was this AMG or
I think it was still pretty good.
I think it was actually better. I think that the aim version, like banning the standbys, just kind of like unlocked this thing that we were like, I think, too hyper focused on before.
Yeah.
Which was like trying to make the standby thing work, and it just turned out that like walking up and shoving 10 aim tokens at your opponent and per shot was just better.
Was this AMG at the time, or was this?
This was FFG.
This is FFG.
Yeah.
Okay.
And So yeah, I mean, I think the standby nerf came in, I don't know, probably like 2 or 3 months after,
And
we had
then
like two
the
or three
turn
months of
zero
that.
nerf happened after that, I think, where they took away turn zero tokens that your scat moves could no longer generate.
Yeah.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I should have also mentioned that Rex will have 3 aims by then to like add to the number of aims that are just like kind of hang around there.
uh,
Uh, it's like yeah, good times, good times. But yeah,
Rex is still paying for the sins of Rexstar.
oh yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Like, and probably will forever, frankly.
Yeah, the hoops that you have to jump through to use take that clankers now are there because of
It's not a
like
good card now. It's just
it
not good.
it has its uses in terms of like keeping Bad Batch safe so that it can take an aim and then run away. And then also it lets a shotgun squad like sit on a home bunker and but it's a utility card. You have to sort of stretch. In a regular clone list, it's not any good.
No.
Um, but yeah, it was just a confluence of badness, and I hope that we're never in a place again where we have to deal with that. So we
It's
should
really
yeah, go ahead, Isaiah.
it's nice hearing about all these sort of things. As somebody who's newer to the game, and I think a lot of communities are this way. It's there's a heavy, I want to say, bias for people to feel like now is the most busted thing in the game. Whenever you get beat by something, it's like, oh, that's the most insane busted combo, or oh, Empire's so bad, or oh, uh, Clone Commandos were so crazy on launch, or something like that.
Yeah,
It's really nice to hear this sort of thing from a perspective of, wow, that this game is actually very balanced comparatively to something like that, because that sounds like something you couldn't design a list around. You couldn't, I can't imagine a way to beat that. So it's kind of cool to hear that sort of thing and compare it to today's game and go, well, we're doing okay.
you're not alone in terms of having a tough time imagining how to beat that. In fact, I think in the Invader League where it was a thing, was it 3 out of the 4 or 4 out of the 4 people in the top 4 were using either Rexstar or the cousin that I think you used at the time, Mike, which was Arcstar,
Yeah.
where you were using full arcs instead of a couple of phase twos.
Yes,
Um,
yeah. Which was definitely less good in the mirror.
right, right.
But much better against everything else.
Yeah, boy, I don't miss those times. So
So this is where I'm hurting because I feel like today we just like went through the list of like ways I've abused the game.
yeah, maybe that says something
Like,
about you, Mike. Maybe you just have like some meditation that you need to do at the end of all this. Um, but to sort of like put our list together, I actually I'm gonna tell you what I have listed here for like the runners up, and you can tell me if you think I'm missing anything. So for the runners up, I have Force Lift, Infinite Range Sniper Rifles, Fortress Tactics, and Late Legacy Legion, Original Coordinated Fire, Speed 3 Jumping Vehicles in Dangerous Environment, because I think that's like so hilarious. It's such a hot mess. I have Yoda Bad Batch, and then Terrain Scoping and Legacy Clone Sharing in general. I actually I have a thought, which is that and then for the top two, I think that the top two are Force Pushing Off the Board and Rexstar. What do you guys think about that being sort of like the general way we have it laid out?
I
Those
mean,
were
I
my
think,
top two.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely Rexstar. It's not close.
Right, Rexstar is the winner, right? Because
Yeah.
it involves so many different rules that had to be fixed individually. On top of the fact that phase twos were probably just like too cheap at the time, in addition to all of that stuff. But it's just like it's so many things. I had a thought because I feel like I can almost combine Rexstar with like the nature of legacy clone sharing because that was like a huge part of it. And then my thought was to actually replace legacy clone sharing with something that we didn't talk about, but I think it's worth mentioning, which is uh, the original creature displacement rules.
Uh, yeah, that was a thing. Tauntauns
The
were a nightmare for like six
tauntauns
months.
would run over your entire army, Isaiah, and displace all of them.
I got this one a
And
little bit.
yeah, they could just Well, I don't think you experienced the worst of this, where they would give suppression tokens to every single unit that they ran over. And if they ran over, like if they ran over 4 leaders, they would get to do the cohesion for all 4 of those units,
Oh,
put them wherever you wanted. And then they could literally, if these are regular trooper units, they could just literally decide, okay, I'm gonna turn my things that I stop here, and therefore I'm gonna get my ram done. So they would run over your whole army, and then to add insult to injury, do their ram attack at the very end of it. And then they would do it again with their second and third tauntaun units, and so you end the turn with like a bunch of units that have been beat up to hell by ram attacks, and they've all been given 3 suppression, and your opponents has gotten to move them like up to 3 times, and it sucked.
that
It
sounds
was
devastating.
it's maybe the closest I've gotten, because I ran into this like very early in Legion. It's the closest I've gotten to be like, you know what, screw this game. This is the worst. Was my poor phase one, me being an idiot with phase one clone troopers, courage one, of course. And it was definitely Izzy, you bastard, who just like ran over all of my troops that had to be huddled together for clone sharing with 3 tauntauns, and then they were all like panicking, and they had been hurt to hell. So my nomination is to replace the legacy clone sharing item, to basically combine that with Rexstar, and then put creature displacement in there.
I'm okay. I actually completely forgot about that, and that definitely was a nightmare.
It sucks.
It was really not good.
No,
I
G-Vax
mean,
could do it too, but like way less well than Tauntauns could.
yeah, I mean, this was an issue with vehicles in general, right?
Right.
Like,
Old displacement rules were rough.
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
they were bad with the bus, but man, it was way worse when there were multiple, like A, there were multiple suppression tokens going out, and then B, the ram attack at the end.
I mean,
SP3.
yeah, I definitely think that like, but those, yeah, I think clone token sharing and like the displacement rules in general were two of the like worst things that were ever introduced in the game.
Yeah,
Like
I
just from like I
a
mean, I
fun
think we're
standpoint.
still paying for the clone token sharing thing, frankly. It's
Yeah,
it's not a coincidence that like yes, we talk about Republic a lot, but like it's not a coincidence that like the majority of the like faction related things on this list are Republic oriented. Clone token sharing has just been a nightmare to balance since its inception when and to this day it continues to be an issue.
right. I mean, it still finds ways to pop up, and I my heart really, like, non-sarcastically, does go out to the current devs of the game, because needing to design around clone token sharing, knowing that they don't want to take it away, because there would be so much risk of just like basically obliterating the entire faction if they did that. And and so that's why I don't think they're going to do that, but they have to design around it, and that cannot be easy. We know for a fact it's not easy, because of how many times it's required fixing of some kind in the game's history.
I
uh
love their solution with
with a
Bad
Bad
Batch.
Batch.
I'm
He's
just
like,
saying,
you know what, you
no,
can't do it.
no, we're not. No,
Then
no,
I like how that was also the
no,
the solution when backup became a thing, because they're like, Bad Batch would like really, really benefit from backup. And it's like, you know what, you
nope,
can't do that either.
nope, no, 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 no.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like you can't do that with every clone unit though, right? Like you
True.
can't. I mean,
No,
like
yeah.
you could, but then they're not clones anymore,
Then
right?
what's the
Like
point of the
that.
faction? Yeah,
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like you kind of gotta.
Catch 22.
Yes.
they just keep giving us vehicles instead of clone troopers. They just keep pumping vehicles in and finding the most like obscure Star Wars vehicles they can give us.
There's a lot of AT dash something something in
Just give us
Republic.
Gungans, you know? That's the solution.
Well, when Gungans are mentioned, that means that it's time to wrap up the podcast
Does it?
officially. I think so. I think
Okay.
so.
All right. All right.
But yeah, that was fun. We will, Mike, I'll get that list to you, and we will publish it alongside the episode so that folks can follow along. But Isaiah, thank you for dropping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
We'll have you by the next time you try to make other Republic things work, or maybe are you going to spread out to some other factions, Isaiah? You can sort of branch out a little bit, or you just a Gar man through and through.
I might play. I have CIS. I like Caitlin has CIS, and I really want to try getting into it. I'm not a hobbyist. I hate painting, so
I feel
for
yeah.
me that is such a barrier to entry that I am more limited by my army collection than by my list building
Yeah,
skills.
For what
that's
it's
fair.
worth, CIS are the easiest army to paint by a lot.
Yeah, I mean they're one of they're the only army where you can literally like airbrush
Yeah,
half of it.
I
I
really
literally
want to play
just
some
primed
geos, man.
mine,
They seem
primed
Yeah,
so
mine,
good.
and
yeah,
like dry brushed them.
that's so good. Yeah, so but we'll have you back to tell more tales of our of the various things that we try to make happen locally, and maybe next time one of us will actually do well
God,
with
I
what
hope
we're
so.
trying out. But yeah, Mike, how do we land the plane?
Yeah, this has been the Notorious Scoundrels, Season 4, Episode 19. I'm Mike.
I'm Evan.
I'm Isaiah.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.